If you're a fast car fan with an aversion to SUVs, but the family has outgrown a traditional hatchback, then your options are pretty slim. If you're a VW fan though, I've got some good news, because this is the new Golf R Wagon. But can it match the hatch in terms of driving dynamics, or is it just a poor relation? The Golf R Wagon will set you back $68,990 before on-road costs, a $3,000 premium over the hatch. Its only real competitors are other VWs, specifically the larger Passat and the Tiguan R, which cost the same and uses the same powertrain as the Golf, but in a taller SUV body. VW offers a 5-year unlimited kilometre warranty and prepaid service plans of $1,700 over 3 years or $3,000 over 5, with intervals of 12 months or 15,000 kilometres. I think the best way to approach this is probably just to compare it to the hatch, because I think it's safe to assume you want the hatch, but you need the extra space. I'll tell you what's the same, what's different, and whether that's a positive or a negative. The main difference, of course, is the size, the wagon being 35 centimetres longer with an extra 5 centimetres in the wheelbase, and that means more interior space. Behind the tailgate, which is now electrically operated, you'll find 611 litres of space, which is 60% more than the hatch. Features include 4 tie-down points, shopping hooks, a light and 12-volt outlet, and a 3-stage luggage cover. There's more room in the back here too, courtesy of that 5 centimetre wheelbase stretch. That might not sound like much, and I guess it isn't, but it makes a big difference to rear legroom, and it might just be the extra length you need to comfortably fit that baby seat. There are ISOFIX points in the outboard seats, cup holders in the fold-down centre armrest, a pair of USB-C ports, and the Golf has triple zone climate control, so that means not just vents, but separate temperature controls for the rear. Another neat feature is these small pockets on the back of the front seats, which are the perfect size to hold your phone. At first glance, the R, like all Mark 8 Golfs, makes a pretty good impression. You sit a bit high, but the seats are very comfy. We've got this minimalist design, and there's clearly plenty of technology in here. It's when you start interacting with it all though that things go a bit awry. Haptic buttons are all the rage at the moment because they allow you to slide as well as tap. But in reality, they're a bit clumsy and imprecise, which isn't ideal as the Golf uses them for audio and heating controls. The steering wheel is very busy with controls for the audio, active cruise control and digital instruments, which are highly configurable with 6 different layouts that prioritise different information like sat-nav or driving assists. Where things get a bit tricky is here, the infotainment. VW seems to have mostly fixed the latency issues that many overseas reviewers have complained about. The trouble is the system itself just isn't that good. It's okay, not particularly intuitive, but I'm sure eventually you'd find where everything is and how to get to it relatively quickly. For me though, the biggest issue is that things that used to take one button press, whether it be adjusting the stop-start or the ESP or the heated seats or even the fan speed, now require multiple inputs. And if you double or triple the amount of time it takes me to do something, then that's not progress, that's regression. The infotainment is loaded with features though, including wired and wireless smartphone mirroring, app connectivity, voice and gesture control and digital radio. VW has also loaded the Golf R with equipment, including wireless charging, a head-up display, electrically adjustable memory seats with heating and ventilation, a heated steering wheel, another pair of USB-C ports, and LED ambient lighting with 30 colours. An 8-speaker Harman Kardon stereo was standard, but the microchip shortage has relegated it to a $1,000 option, along with the panoramic glass sunroof, which is another $2,000. The reversing camera is aided by sensors front and rear, or there's auto park if you'd prefer the car to do it for you. In terms of active safety, the Golf R has everything, all our boxes ticked and much more besides. The systems can be a bit nervous, but are generally pretty unobtrusive. If you're familiar with how the Golf R hatch drives, whether you've read about it or watched it or even driven it yourself, you can basically switch off now because the wagon feels pretty much the same. If you drove them back to back on the same bit of road, you might be able to tell a couple of tiny differences, but I actually drove the hatch last week, so it's fresh in my mind and they feel much of a muchness to me. That probably shouldn't come as a huge surprise, as the steering is the same, the brakes are the same, the gearbox is the same, the all-wheel drive system is the same, which I'll cover more in a moment. There are a couple of small differences. The Wagon is about 80 kilograms heavier with a slightly different weight distribution. The tyres are the same size, but the hatch was on Bridgestones and this is on Hancooks. And there's actually a couple of small differences in the engine as well. See, the Wagon uses a petrol particulate filter in its exhaust, whereas the hatch still uses a catalytic converter. So the Wagon produces the same 235 kilowatts, but over a slightly wider band, has 20 newton meters extra torque, and its claimed combined fuel consumption is 7.4 litres per 100k, not 7.8. It's an impressive engine in terms of the power it produces, shoving the Wagon to 100 k's an hour in around 4.5 seconds, but it doesn't sound like much of anything really. There is some fake noise, but it's not a growl or anything, it's just a noise. No complaints with the gearbox, the brakes are really strong, but it's the handling that sets this new R apart. In simple terms, it's just got outrageous grip. It grips and grips and grips, front and rear, wet or dry, doesn't matter. Where this R differs from its predecessors though, is that the all-wheel drive system can send a lot more power to the rear. It doesn't do so as overtly as in, say, the new Mercedes A45 or the old Ford Focus RS, but it still allows you to drive the car in a different manner to any other previous all-wheel drive Golf. The downside, if you can call it that, of this new capability is that at road speeds, the R rarely feels flustered. It never really feels like it's trying. Still, that's kind of always been the fast Golf way, and there is the promise of greater thrills if you do venture onto the racetrack. Speaking of, there are multiple drive modes, from sport to race to drift, though I've found myself most often using the special Nürburgring mode, which supposedly mimics the setup required to go fast at the iconic German circuit. It's a really good choice for road driving though, because it teams the sporty drivetrain with a more compliant chassis, but to be honest, it's always pretty firm. Still, slightly firm right aside, when you're just driving day to day, the Golf R does what fast Golfs have always done. It just works. It's an utterly undemanding partner. Quiet, practical, safe, economical, and yet capable of tearing up a mountain road at supercar scaring speed should the mood take you. It's the ultimate do-everything car, especially in wagon form. Certainly the added practicality of the larger body offsets any marginal dynamic disadvantage. And yet, I do miss the old Golf R. Obviously, this new car is better. Faster, more capable, safer, better equipped, higher tech, but the old car sounded better, and its interior was not only nicer to look at, but also to interact with. VW has done a great job with the new R, particularly on the performance side of things. So it's a shame that the infotainment experience, something you interact with so regularly, is an exercise in frustration. 2 steps forward, a half step back, you might say. Still, if you're after a fast family hauler, there is an awful lot to like here.